Hello, this is Carl Benjamin. He's known on YouTube as Sargon of Akkad. He is a typical right-wing anti-male person, and he is the usual sheep and wolf in sheep's clothing type guy. He used to be an anti-feminist, and people think that anti-feminist would mean pro-male. It isn't. He was only an anti-feminist when for his own issues, in case he got in trouble. But as you can see, Carl put this tweet out. The word refugee should encompass only women and children, which means only women. And of course, he shows this kind of pale-faced woman walking around, good-looking woman, and then he has all these brown-skinned guys who dislikes because he doesn't like men, and he doesn't like the race as well. So if you're a woman, you should be allowed to just come in and enjoy everything in the country. And if you're a guy, you should be forced to go back to your country and suffer, or just die of thirst on a boat. This guy shows his true colors. And all these guys, all these right-wingers, by the way, call themselves classical liberals. Classical liberals do exist, but these guys are so ashamed of their right-wing politics and their right-wing thinking that they relabel themselves. Now, before we get into this, one of my videos about a year ago talked about these feminists in his country, in the UK, that wanted an all-male curfew because one woman was killed by one man. They wanted an all-male curfew. And when I typed that in here, I didn't get anything from Carl. Now, maybe YouTube is blocking it, but my guess is he probably never talked about it himself. He's concerned about the dirty Muslim men, right? Now, we will get into this.
Sarah Champion, who has been remarkably honest and to her own detriment about talking about the Muslim rape gangs that have been operating in Britain, has suggested in 2015 that there could have been up to 1 million young girls raped by these gangs in this country.
So, if he's included, if it's just men in general, he gets upset. But put a label on another group of men where he gets excluded and he's fine. Now he pushes the feminist narrative of these men going out just raping women. 1 million of them.
He describes it as a national disaster and wanted a task force to fight this horror. And it's to her credit that she called this out. And honestly, I'm glad that she kept her seat in the last election, because she is one of the few people in this country who's being honest about what's happening.
I don't think there's any honesty about saying 1 million girls were raped by Muslims.
Report found that 84% of the grooming gang members are, quote, Asian, and when they say Asian, they mean Pakistani, but I think it's somewhere in the 95% plus of them being Muslim. I think that is the real key issue, key axis of what makes them do this. Frankly, I think Islam is behind this.
So it's a conspiracy theory from Islam, right? But Islam doesn't act that way in countries that, Islam is prevalent, right? Or is the founding religion. So the idea that Islam men would go to other countries and behave differently, sorry, I don't buy that. Now look at this bullshit. Grooming gang victim, I was raped by more than 100 men, but police arrested me, not them. He should be ashamed to push that giant lie out. My videos often have women who just bold-faced lie. And this woman told a giant lie. It's so huge, it's obvious. Police are white knights. They can't wait to pound on low-status men of any race if they think there's a damsel in distress. So I don't believe this young girl at all.
And this is pretty horrific for the victims. This is a report from May, from one of the grooming gang victims. She's now in her 20s, 23. She was raped by more than 100 men and says that the police arrested her and not them.
Like I said, if they arrested her, she was probably doing criminal activity. And this is like standard Me Too horseshit. Some woman tells a story about something that happened 10, 20 years ago. In this case, it was 10 years ago. And they live off the victimhood narrative. I mean, he knows this. Carl Benjamin, are you for the Me Too movement? That is not a rhetorical question. We'll see if he ever answers that. If you're not, then this bullshit you shouldn't be pushing.
But this is just listen to this, right? She was 11 years old at the time, and for 5 hellish years, the authorities turned a blind eye. A rapist would ply her with drugs to make it easier to force her in sex, and police issued the teenager a warning for possessing them. They even arrested her on suspicion of facilitating a child sex offence when she and another underage girl got into an abuser's car.
Okay, there's no details to this whatsoever. So she was 11-year-old. Was he a runaway? Was that the case? Sorry, I do not believe that she was 11-year-old girl of typical parents, and she just disappeared, and the parents never called the police, and the police refused to go rescue her. Sorry, that is bullshit. And if she was involved with this child sex offense, she probably was in some way. Now, this should raise some red flags.
Horrific. She says, I was arrested around 5 times in total, but nothing ever seemed to happen to the men who were abusing me. No wonder I thought I was to blame. I was so hurt and confused, especially when they suggested it was my fault another girl had been abused. I was only 15.
So she was arrested 5 times. So the first time she was arrested, and she was supposed to be, what, 11 years old? The police didn't put her in foster care. So the police arrested her, and then what? She was a kid and they just let her out in the street again to go back to these men? Sorry, I don't believe that whatsoever. And if she was arrested 5 times, I suspect she was doing actual criminal activity. I suspect she would go back to these guys willingly. She wanted to be there. Because there's no way the UK police would ever behave like this, the way this story is, this bullshit story is making it out. So they arrested the child and they just set her free and said, go back to home, and they just let her walk off. And and every time she was arrested, they didn't say, oh, these guys are attacking you, we'll put you in foster care. Like, come on. This is a bullshit narrative. Now, being a right winger, he is not going to be, of course, he's not going to be about being anti-male. He's anti-male himself. That's why he's attacking these men. He's going to make this about left-right politics. You'll see.
If you think about it, it's genuinely something that is absolute clown world, and it is something that the left have facilitated. Tony Blair opened the borders and brought millions of Pakistani Muslims in. The Labour Party.
There you go. There you go. The left. I told you these right wingers are anti-male. They take situations where men are being demonized and they jump on it and make it about the left. He's got a left, right wing, what do you call it? It's an obsession. And they always derail an important topic every time. Sargon of Akkad here, Carl Benjamin is anti-male to the core. He is. So he opened the borders and all these Muslim people came, but only Muslim men, only single Muslim men. And these men are what? Are they working for a living? Are they welfare? But they're criminals, right? And all these white UK girls, their parents forget that they left the house and never returned, and they walk down the street and they're just scooped up and nobody can do anything about it. Sorry, this is a bullshit narrative done by a man who hates other men. And of course, because he took up the anti-feminist label, because he wants to scurry and say, please, I'm one of the good guys. These anti-feminists are no different than, the male, feminist that they demonize. He has videos talking about male feminists, but he's no different where it counts.
This is the Labour Party's fault. You can blame them, and they will not accept any responsibility for this either.
Yeah, this is the Labour Party's fault. So this is just his political views about left-right politics, and he doesn't like Labour. So this anti-male jumps on these Muslim men. That's all that's going on here. I don't think I need to show much more of the video. This is what this guy actually is. This is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And all these right-wing, tradcon, anti-male, disgusting lowlifes show their true colors eventually. Every one of them. They can't help themselves. They can't keep the face mask on forever. Oh yeah, this is another thing these disgusting guys do. They use the pedophile smear. Men attack other men with a pedophile smear in order to say, there's the bad guy, go after them.
Gangs, and he got in trouble because he called them Asian paedophiles in a tweet. These sick Asian paedophiles are finally facing justice. I want to commend the bravery of the victims. For too long they were ignored. Not on my watch. There will be no no-go areas. That's what I want to hear.
And of course, the no-go areas is bullshit. At best, they were maybe, every country, like every city has like areas that are dangerous for people to go into. So people avoid it. That's not a no-go area. They're suggesting that the Muslims there hedge people out, and even the police won't go there. That is bullshit as well.
No no-go areas in this investigation. We're gonna draw it all out. This is gonna be horrible for the left and I don't know why Sajid Javid and the rest of the Conservatives aren't just pinning this to Labour's.
There you go. He's a conservative, and it's all the left's fault, right? Even though all the feminist destruction, in the UK going on now is upheld by the conservatives just as much as the left wing. Nobody is fighting them. So again, it's all about this anti-male. That's what it is. This is an anti-male person. He wants to attack other men. And again, he wants to protect himself. He wants to exclude himself somehow. And this is how it's done. And this, I think, is important too. He talks about lifestyle choices, which I think is probably true, that these young girls prefer to be with these men.
Hands of this is something we don't have to worry about. These are women who have made lifestyle choices. And I really mean that. There are lots of examples of where they literally say, I'll just do a quick lifestyle choice. Lifestyle choice. Lifestyle choice.
Well, if that's the case, then it probably is, there's truth to it. Most guys know that young girls end up hanging with the thugs. Guys have said this, en masse on a macro level for years. So basically these young girls, like I said, I don't believe at all, 0%, that some young girl was scooped up by Muslim men and her parents just never called the police and the police never did anything. I suspect these young girls are going there and they like these dangerous men. So I'm sorry, but he hasn't disproved this at all. There's been no evidence in this video showing that these girls have been snatched up and they're forced to stay behind, in somebody's house or apartment. None. So I think this is all we need to see about this anti-male person. I have nothing but contempt for him. Oh, before we go, one last thing. He's going to talk about these young girls being the most vulnerable. He's not going to mention boys whatsoever. There's just as many homeless boys out there or whatever, boys in trouble as girls. No mention of boys.
rot at the heart of our police forces when it comes to this, and they need to address this. This is a moral failing on their part. This is a failing of the United Kingdom to protect its own citizens, the most vulnerable, young girls from broken families. These are literally the most vulnerable, and they're being preyed upon by adult Muslim men.
Oh yeah, and what about all the young boys from broken homes? These young girls probably are running to these guys from abusive homes. And these young guys are willing to snatch them up and say, sure, you can hang with me. Young boys don't have that, do they, Carl Benjamin? If they're from broken homes, they just got to sit there and suffer inside their own broken homes. They are the ones who are the most vulnerable because they don't have the same out these young girls do. These young girls can't just run, unlike these young girls, they can't just run off and have some guy take care of them. They can't run to the arms of a stranger. And this is the other thing. These young Muslim guys, they might be treating these girls. As a matter of fact, I would say they are treating these girls much better than they were in their broken homes. So there is a failing in British society, but not in the way that you're painting it. Okay, now we'll end it here.